evening. In China, there's been a huge outpouring of grief and anger at the treatment of a doctor who tried to warn the world of the dangers of the coronavirus. Hundreds of millions of people have viewed social media posts on Dr. Li Wenliang, who's died after contracting the illness while treating infected patients. He was censored by the authorities in the city of Wuhan after raising the alarm back in December about the potential dangers of the virus. The government has now sent officials to investigate how he was treated. Well, as the coronavirus continues to spread, controls and restrictions are increasing right across China, where more than 600 people have now died and another 31,000 have been infected. From Beijing, here's our China correspondent, John Sodworth.
In some cities, those suspected of being sick are being rounded up, with multiple unverified videos showing the quarantine squads at work. It's all adding to a growing sense of disbelief and dread. I don't want to be taken away like that, a child can be heard saying. But now the fear is turning to anger. Dr. Li Wenliang was one of the first to report signs of the new strange virus. But his online posts were censored, and the police made him sign this confession, along with 7 others, for spreading rumours. His death from the virus in this Wuhan hospital has prompted an outpouring on social media. The hashtag #IWantFreedomOfSpeech viewed almost 2 million times before being blocked. Dr. Li was the first whistleblower, but no one cared, this man tells me. Are you angry? Yes, a bit, she says, but more hopeless. If they'd listened to him, the situation would be better now. On a Beijing riverbank, we find a tribute to the doctor. Goodbye, Li Wenliang, it says. There can be no doubting just how sensitive a moment this now is for China's ruling Communist Party. The already simmering concern about the mishandling of the crisis exploding into a public wave of anger and grief. In the death of a doctor, the systemic failings have been laid bare. The response, though, is likely to be more censorship. These videos of Wuhan's hospitals, the conditions inside, and the people queuing for masks were taken by a blogger, Chan Qiu-shi. I spoke to him earlier this week. What's your thoughts about how long you will be able to continue providing independent reporting from Wuhan? I'm not sure, he says. The censorship's so strict, people's accounts are being closed down if they share my content. His family say he's now disappeared. In this public health disaster, there are real political risks, and the orders are already being sent out. Maintain stability, tighten control. John Sudworth, BBC News, Beijing.
A British man on his honeymoon is among more than 60 people who've tested positive for the virus on board a cruise ship in Japan. Alan Steele, who's 58 and from Wolverhampton, has been taken to a nearby hospital for treatment. Of the 3,700 people on board the Diamond Princess, it's thought there are around 80 Britons with the ship quarantined in Yokohama. All the passengers have been confined to their cabins for the next fortnight. Here's our medical correspondent, Fergus Walsh.
Some passengers have called it a floating prison. 3 days into the 2-week quarantine off Japan, passengers are being allowed to exercise on deck wearing face masks. But dozens on the Diamond Princess have been removed to hospital for treatment. Among them, Alan Steele, on his honeymoon. He's among nearly 80 British people on board.
41 additional passengers being found positive tested for the coronavirus, one of whom is a friend of ours on honeymoon who was going to be split from his wife, on honeymoon. He is going to be taken to a medical facility and she will have to remain on board.
There's still a lot we don't know about this virus, and the next few weeks will be crucial in determining whether a pandemic, a global epidemic, can be averted. It's spread through droplets, face-to-face contact within a couple of meters of an infected person. The incubation period is up to 14 days. It now looks less likely that people spread the infection before they have symptoms. The virus causes a fever and cough. The majority have mild symptoms, but it can cause breathing difficulties and viral pneumonia as lung tissue becomes inflamed. Most of those who've died are elderly with underlying health problems, but not all. Dr. Li Wenliang, among the first to raise the alarm about the new virus, was just 34. He would have risked repeated infections at close quarters to patients.
If a large amount of virus is coming in all at the same time, in the case of a healthcare worker working very closely with infected patients, it could be that the amount of virus in the body increases very, very rapidly before the immune system has a chance to deal with it. And so that could lead to rapid onset, severe disease.
The World Health Organization has warned of a global shortage of face masks and other protective equipment, in part because people who don't need them are buying them.
The world is facing severe disruption in the market for personal protective equipment. Demand is up to 100 times higher than normal, and prices are up to 20 times higher.
A final evacuation flight of British nationals from Wuhan, like this one last week, is due to arrive on Sunday. Passengers will then be taken to a quarantine facility in Milton Keynes. Fergus Walsh, BBC News.
Well, our health editor Hugh Pym is outside St Thomas's Hospital in central London, where one coronavirus patient is being treated. Just bring us up to date, Hugh.
Well, Clive, the events leading up to the patient arriving here yesterday at the Specialist Infectious Diseases Centre at St Thomas's are becoming a bit clearer. He'd been at a business conference in Singapore. He flew back, but the Singapore authorities contacted him to say at the conference somebody had tested positive for the virus, and just to warn him, he got home to Brighton where he had symptoms. He called NHS 111. They advised him to go to an isolated NHS facility to be tested. He went back home, was isolated there, and then tested positive. Now, NHS sources are saying that he did exactly the right thing, calling NHS 111, not going to a crowded A&E. We don't know how many other British people were at that conference. We've also learned today that a group of passengers, British citizens being flown in from Wuhan on Sunday, will go to a 2-week quarantine period in Milton Keynes to a conference and training facility called Kents Hill Park. It's been block booked by the NHS. Now, the local hospital trust is saying it's completely separate from the hospital. Services there will not be affected. Of course, previous groups of passengers flown back from Wuhan have been taken to Arrow Park Hospital in Wirral. They're about halfway through their 2-week quarantine period.
OK, Hugh, thank you for that. Hugh Pym there at St Thomas's Hospital in central London.